Can you hear me well? Do I need to use the mic?
Maybe for the video.
I think it's fine, your call. It's audible, it's pretty
It's
well.
audible?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming, and thanks Pracheer for hosting the talk. It's a pleasure to be here. It's especially fitting to speak at Amazon, which is normally creating compelling value for consumers and businesses around the world, but it's transforming industries and work. It's very relevant to today's talk as well. Just for my curiosity, how many of you in this audience got at least one higher education degree in India?
So higher education means
Post 12. Okay, almost everywhere. Of those, everybody in the audience, how many of you have kids? Small number. Some. Of those who have kids, how many of you plan to send your kids to India for higher education? Okay. Great. So in today's talk, what I will cover is why India needs a vibrant higher education system, especially in this 21st century. How is India's education system doing? And how can we make India's higher education system world class? And finally, a little bit about Nalanda 2.0 and what we are doing about it. So that's really the outline of the talk. If you can hold your questions till the end, that way you will have the benefit of the entire presentation. You can take a Q&A afterwards. My talk is about 20 minutes. You'll have plenty of time after that. I know the conference room is maybe till 4, but if you have time and there's enough questions, we can continue. So the very first question, why does it matter? Why do we need a vibrant higher education system, and why in this 21st century? So for all the amazing things that have happened in India since independence, and it's come a long way, post-colonial India, India is still facing several challenges at unprecedented scale, scope, and speed. And what do I mean by that? So India needs to empower the largest youth population in the world. It's 580 million people below the age of 25. These are people who need to be prepared for their lives, careers, and lifelong learning as we speak. We are the youngest population in the world with 28.1 years of median age. That's a huge challenge in itself. If you think about the scale and the scope of the challenge, it is India's defining challenge and opportunity of the 21st century. Just that number. If I didn't share with you any other stats, this would be the reason to make higher education a priority. In addition to that, what's happening, and that's why I mentioned Amazon is a fitting place for this talk, because you're part of that transformation, whether it's automation, AI, things like that are really disrupting industries and future work, what skills will be required for the 21st century workforce. It's happening now. So India, in fact, needs to reskill and upskill the second largest workforce in the entire world. So in addition to preparing and educating the youth that are just coming up through the education pipeline, we have this reskilling and upskilling challenge of unprecedented scale and scope. And the speed at which needs to happen, 54% need to be reskilled by 2022. So now this is World Economic Forum. There are estimates by McKinsey Global Institute and a lot of other think tanks and consulting organizations that point to the enormity of the challenge facing India. So between education, upskilling, reskilling, India is facing tremendous challenges. So if you go beyond these two, we have additional challenges that are affecting 100 million people each. I call them India's mega challenges, whether it's water, food, health, energy, environment, climate change, urban migration. The numbers are staggering. Just to give you One example, the water crisis that India is facing is going to be the worst water crisis in its history. And these are predictions, whether it will happen in 2020 or whether in 2025 it will happen. The exact date or year is not known. Again, enormity of the challenge is the scale is enormous, right? 75% of the households don't have drinking water access at their premise. The groundwater depletion is so rapid that by 2020, 21 major Indian cities will run out of it, likely to be, in a huge shortage. And these are all interrelated complex problems. Clean drinking water has impact on health, and so on and so forth. So these are complex, multidisciplinary problems that need to be addressed at scale, at speed, for India to really address it for the population. Now, a vibrant higher education system is imperative to addressing these challenges and opportunities. While there are a number of point solutions you can take, but creating institutions, essentially a higher education system, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Essentially, a vibrant higher education system does three things really well. And again, being in the US, we are beneficiaries. In fact, we were having a pre-talk chat. We are beneficiaries of that vibrant higher education system in the US. A system that empowers the next generation of professionals and leaders in all sectors of the society, spurs the innovation and startup ecosystem, and it solves problems that matter to the society. In terms of empowering people, it's across the board, whether it's teachers in K-12, faculty members in higher education, professionals in every sector of the industry, and government departments. Now, as we know, it's the people that really drive an economy or drive solutions to the problems. They lead organizations, manage resources, innovate, create, solve, etc., etc. So really, that's a very important part of what a vibrant higher education system does. It also solves problems that matter. Now, this is a picture of UC Berkeley. An example from Berkeley, Arthur Rosenfeld was a professor of physics at UC Berkeley. He was also a researcher at Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. His work on energy standards and policies is being credited for California using 30% less energy per capita than the rest of the United States. And his credit to has allowed us to save $100 billion annually as a result of his work. So this is the kind of the power of a faculty in a research lab making an impact in the society on things that really matter. Across the bay from Berkeley, this is Stanford, a great example for spurring innovation and startup. The numbers are staggering, right? They're really revealing on the impact of a vibrant university, a world-class multidisciplinary research universities. The logos you see are the companies that were started by Stanford alumni or faculty or students. These are household names, global brand names. The two numbers that I particularly want to point you towards is the 5.4 million jobs created since 1930s by the 40,000 startups coming out of Stanford. And those startups in 2013, 2014 generated $2.7 trillion in annual revenues, a staggering amount coming out of one university. So there, the summary of all those, what I just shared is the vibrant higher education system matters, and matters to India for all the reasons I mentioned, the demographics, the grand challenges it's facing, as well as the upskilling and reskilling that needs to happen. And the power that we know exists of vibrant higher education from the examples I shared from Berkeley and Stanford. So how is India's higher education system doing? Now, most of you have studied there, so what I say now won't be a surprise from a personal experience point of view. However, just to sort of put it all together, I'll share a few key stats. So the gross enrollment ratio, the students studying in the 18 to 23-year category, which is used as the denominator for that calculation, India is at 27%. Which seems like a big number. A few decades back it was 7% or 8%, so it's come a long way, but it lags behind significantly from the rest of the world. Now we tend to compare ourselves to China quite a bit because of a variety of reasons. China is at 51%. Singapore, which got its independence in 1965, is at 84%. It significantly lags behind. And that's just one piece of it. Those who do get into the education system in India, higher education, and I'm exclusively talking about higher education, which is post-secondary education, so after 12, right? Includes community colleges, etc. 75% to 90% are considered unemployable by the industry. So even though the gross enrollment ratio has improved, the outcomes coming out of those colleges is really poor. As a result, the industry is investing 6 to 12 months in training these recent graduates for productive work. And if you look at the excellence in the university system, we just have one university in the top 500 global rankings. Again, in this metric, we lag far behind. US is 135 universities in the top 500. China has rapidly changed itself in the last since mid-1990s, and it is a very impressive 45. South Korea, which got its independence in 1950, is at 12 and has a population of 50 million people. Singapore, which is what, 5 or 6 million people, has 2 universities in the top 500. So again, India lags behind significantly on those metrics. Yes, and the elite institution that we keep talking and everybody keeps referring as IITs and IIMs and AIMS, they enroll less than 0.2%. There is such a severe shortage of excellent higher education institutions that parents are spending $50 billion annually to improve their students' chances in the higher education system. So this $50 billion has two numbers. $40 billion is the amount spent on coaching to improve the students' chances of getting into premier institutions annually. $10 billion is the amount of money spent to send the kids overseas for higher education. And it's 10 times more than what the government is spending on higher education itself. So this is, if you look at all these 5-6 metrics that I've shared, it's clear that India's higher education system is in crisis. Just to make things a little bit better, I'm making the distinction that we have tremendous talent. The institutions are weak. So we have tremendous talent. Don't get me wrong. We have. Imagine India if we had great institutions. We would have a completely different dynamic as we can project. So far I've talked about the importance of India's a vibrant higher education system and the fact that India's higher education system is in crisis. So what do we do about it? Or what can India do about it? So India has done really well in terms when it faces crisis. You probably have heard about the Green Revolution in 1960s and 70s when we transformed the help of a lot of players and solved our wheat and rice crisis. We also have heard about the White Revolution, which solved the milk shortages. And at the gunpoint of foreign exchange crisis, we had the economic liberalization. What we are proposing is that it's time for a great revolution, urgent and comprehensive reforms in higher education. The crisis is here. We need to take sort of urgent actions to address it. So what does that mean? We believe there are 5 big ideas that can transform India's higher education system. The examples from Berkeley and Stanford clearly indicate that we need 100 world-class multidisciplinary research universities. Again, because they are not only they empower people for their lives and careers, but they also solve problems that matter, and they also spur the research, innovation, and startup ecosystem. So we really need 100. And in fact, I'm going to talk about one such university that Nalanda 2.0 is involved later in the discussion. And what we are suggesting is, while maybe half of those could be existing elite or premier institutions that are transformed into world-class multidisciplinary research universities, there is a tremendous need to create new ones because we do need new capacity. So it's a combination of new universities and transforming existing ones. How many of you are familiar with the California Master Plan in higher education? So in 1960s, Clark Kerr, at that time president of the UC system, and a few others, architected what is now referred to as California Master Plan. It basically had three-legged strategy where essentially it has California community colleges, the California State University system, San Jose State, Cal Poly, etc. California community colleges include De Anza and Foothill College, Ohlone College. And the third one is the UC system, the UC Berkeley, UC LA, UC San Diego, etc. And the basic premise was, how do we provide 100% access to excellent education to all Californians? That was the vision, that was the goal, and they architected this three-legged system to essentially provide that to the state of California. And they have essentially achieved their objective. While there are some cracks in the system, they did a phenomenal job. It basically had a couple of fundamental premises. One was that research is expensive, so you can't have every university be a research university. So there was the UC system was considered to be the system where it would not only do undergraduate and master's education, but also be the primary provider of PhD education and do the research. So those are about 10, 11 campuses. The CSU system was to focus on undergraduates and masters, primarily teaching, not as much research. And the California Community College system was all about associate degrees, credentialing, the nurses, the firefighters, all of those were considered to be part of the California Community Colleges. And it was so successful that most of the states in the US copied that model in one form or another. It is a powerful model. It also assumes that people bloom at different stages and at different ages. Not everybody is ready to crack a national exam at age 18 or age 19. Some are late bloomers. Some may find themselves ready for higher education at a later stage. So this plan also allowed for pathways from one system to another, depending on the student. So it was a very student-friendly, it is a very student-friendly model that needs to be copied within the Indian context. So there's a tremendous power to thinking about how we can provide 100% access to excellent higher education to everybody. So that was developing the master plan for each state. Despite 70 plus years of independence, we still have British Raj, that's the colonial rules, regulations, and mindset in higher education. We need to eliminate that. Give you two examples. So in British time, colonial time, it was in their interest to make sure people coming into administrative fields helping Britishers manage India came from colleges that were approved by the British. Made sense? We have continued that practice. So if you go from Meerut to Delhi, or Delhi to Meerut, which is where my mother lives now, there are basically along the road you'll find colleges of different shapes and sizes. One room to multiple rooms. It's funny if you go that route. But it's interesting, if you look at their name, they will say whatever the name, UGC approved, deemed university approved by this. It's like a tag that it allows you to say that you come here, no matter how bad the quality, government approved means you will get a job in government service. It's a British mentality or colonial mentality we're still holding on to for some reason. That needs to be eliminated. It should be all outcome based. The second one is affiliated college system. India took that model, British adopted that model in India. And it's a separate discussion if you're not familiar with the affiliated college system. But then we put it on steroids. So now a university has 1,000 affiliated colleges, and the main university, the fleeting university, is dictating the entire curriculum, testing, etc. There's no accountability or responsibility at the affiliated college level. It's a mess. So those are just two examples of the kinds of things we have carried from 70 years back and haven't really innovated or changed given the context and our own recognition of the problems and opportunities. You saw the scale challenge. 580 million people below the age of 25. 54% need to be upskilled, reskilled. There is no way we can build universities fast enough to meet that scale challenge at the speed that we are talking about. So we have to, we must, India needs to leverage massive open online courses and all the innovations in learning and technology that's coming out of wherever in the world, including adaptive learning, personalized learning, to really make excellent education available to the masses. And finally, we need to transform the faculty incentives and accountability system. What makes Stanford, Stanford, or Harvard, Harvard, or MIT, MIT, is its faculty members. And the basic premise that industry and universities around the world have solved is its market-based compensation and merit-based incentives and accountability system. It's been solved. It's not a new idea. And it's been solved in Indian industry itself. But Indian universities have clung on to their government-led system where it's once you're hired, you can pretty much retire from that university unless you do something really awful, illegal. You're set for life. The pay commission sets the ceiling on the salary. It's not necessarily merit-based. So there are lots of issues, fundamental issues. So if you want to really attract the best and the brightest to be the faculty members and institutions in India, you have to fundamentally rethink the compensation and merit system. And we in Nalanda 2.0, I'm going to talk about what we are doing. We are actually adopting a lot of the things that we have just talked about into that university system. So that brings me to the last point, which is what are we doing about it? So we are, Nalanda 2.0 is a 501c3 non-profit organization. Our mission is to make India's higher education system world class. We have a three-pronged strategy, if you will. One is to build the university of the future in India, which is a world-class multidisciplinary research university. The second one is to advise governments, because we do believe the policy level, in fact, changes in policies can make a huge impact at speed and scale. And finally, educating stakeholders, and I'll talk a little bit about that. We're a growing community of 200 donors, volunteers, and advisors. I just wanted to acknowledge Pracheer. He's a Nalanda 2.0 volunteer. He works at Amazon, and and Rakesh Misra. He's also a volunteer. He's actually he's a co-founder of a startup in Bay Area. And I'll talk a little bit about our volunteers as well. So that's us. So building the university of the future in India. Some of you before the talk talked about Nalanda itself. We are inspired by Nalanda of ancient India. So that's where the name comes from. Nalanda of ancient India was one of the earliest universities in the world, and it attracted scholars from around the world, from China, Tibet, Turkey, etc. Oxford and Bologna, the Western universities came hundreds of years after Nalanda was set up. So it's not a Western concept, what we are talking about, this world-class multidisciplinary research university is not a Western concept. It's something that we can say it has Indian roots, and it does. We want to create a university that by 2050 is in the top 25 of global rankings, and where faculty and whose alumni and faculty win Nobel Prizes, at least 3 Nobel Prizes. To make this dream come true, last year we established a global advisory board, people from India and US, leaders from academia, industry, entrepreneurs, research. We assembled over 23 people like a couple of faculty members from Stanford, Vice Chancellor of Research from UC Irvine, President of University of Texas at Darlington, faculty members from the NYU, Georgia Tech, partners from venture capital firms. From India, we have Dr. Anil Kakut, former chairman of Atomic Energy Commission, Montek Singh Ahluwalia, former chairman, deputy chairman of the Planning Commission. Again, some faculty members from IITs and IIIT. So it's an incredible group of people, all came with a single, all diverse. Some people I knew, some people I didn't know, but they all had the same desire to see a multidisciplinary research university in India come true. We just finished developing the master plan in November, and right away we started the efforts to raise $400 million to launch the university. So it's going to be a private, not-for-profit university in India. We have looked at 2 or 3 locations, and we are had some very promising discussions. I was in India for 6 weeks, right, in December, January timeframe. Just came back, very promising. So, and if you remember some of the pointers I shared with you, we believe we are using those principles in developing this university. We know the world is different than it was 20 years back, and it's going to be very different 20 years from now. So how do you create a university that is preparing the students for this new world? Looking at that, we are looking at the curriculum, the pedagogy, the DNA, the values of the institution. We are bringing that in. We also want to make an impact at scale. Scale matters in India, so we are looking very deeply into leveraging MOOCs and other technologies so that it's not just what's happening within the campus, what can be delivered outside the campus at scale for reskilling, upskilling. So we are bringing those concepts, including how do we attract the best and the brightest to be faculty members in these institutions, in this university. So our one of the fundamental principles is to look at market-based compensation and a merit-based incentives and accountability system, because it matters. Market for artificial intelligence is vastly different from history, and that's reality. You can't fight that. Both are important, but that means the market salary for AI person is going to be significantly different and higher than for professor of history or professor of sociology, and that's okay. It's been solved, it's been done. So we are incorporating those principles that we firmly believe need to be incorporated for India to change. The success of this idea, we hope, will inspire other such models in India. So IITs at some point did raise the level. IIMs did raise the level. And that has created a proliferation of those institutions, going from 1 to 5 to now 23. Same way with IIMs, going from 3 to 5 to now, I think, 18 plus, 20 plus. We think creating such an institution will raise the bar and hopefully creates a new category or genre of universities in India that will be at the same level as Stanford or MIT or Tsinghua or NUS around the world. Talk about policy level changes making an impact at scale. We have been meeting people at the central government level, whether it's new education policy committee, NITI Aayog and PMO. We've met several state government leaders in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Delhi. We have started advising the government of Delhi with their higher education initiative. In fact, in the recent visit, I met with them, and they feel they have done a lot of positive on the school education, and now they feel they're ready to take on the higher education challenge. So the timing is perfect from our perspective. We are ready, they are ready, so we're working on that. Educating stakeholders is really important. We think it's all complementary. Our ability to educate stakeholders, talks like these, writing articles, doing panel discussions, spreading the word. Again, this is important, this is urgent, this needs to change. We need to change, and everybody can do their part. And these sort of discussions matter. I'll give you one example. I was in a panel discussion in Berkeley India Conference on higher education. I was on the same panel as several people, but Dr. Mr. Montek Singh Olawale was a fellow panelist. By chance, we were on the same panel. We hit it off, and now he's on the Global Advisory Board of the University Initiative that I just talked about. So these interactions have a way of connecting very sort of interesting ways. I met Rakesh, who was a very active volunteer for Nalanda 2.0, at a talk like this. Something must have clicked. Now he's deeply involved in almost everything we are doing in Nalanda 2.0. And you know, he has now attracted Pracheer to be a volunteer. So it's sort of, these things matter and are very positive and very meaningful ways. Somebody had asked me, so how many people are, so I'm full-time. This is my passion. I wrote the book full-time. I started this initiative and I'm on it. This is my commitment. We have a board of directors, three people, Professor Saraswat of Stanford, Arjun Malhotra, who's an entrepreneur, and myself. We have a global advisory council, again, mix of Stanford, faculty and policy think tank folks. And we have the university's global advisory board is 23 people. We have 15 active volunteers, and we have 163 donors. Again, something that we started last year. Until last year, it was all self-funded. Last year, we started raising money, and we'll continue to raise money, gifts, grants from foundations and corporations and individual donors. Welcome to join our group of growing donors and volunteers. Our mission is very straightforward. We want to make India's higher education system world class. And with that, I just want to say that the book that Pracheer mentioned earlier was published in 2015. Amazon is my publisher. And is the foundation for Nalanda 2.0. So the research, the analysis, the recommendations. So if any of this thing, what I shared, intrigues you or want to learn more, you can buy a copy of my book. A Nobel laureate is a UC Berkeley professor who presented my book to Prime Minister Modi in 2017, and it has received a lot of positive reviews from business and academic leaders in India and US. I want to acknowledge Pracheer again and Rakesh and Sumedha, who is not here, and the entire Nalanda team, 2.0 team and donors for the fact that I'm here, the fact that we have been able to accomplish so much with so little and so quickly. I feel very excited to be here. And with that, I want to just summarize the talk and open the floor for questions.